I had taken care of the bills, but I didn't know where I'd put the card, and I lose my cards all the time and my keys, but I find them. And it just went from bad to worse, and it ended up physical. He mopped the kitchen floor up with me, up against the refrigerator a couple times. It wasn't good. I threw some things at him to try to get him away from me. I mean, this man is a proclaimed third-degree black belt in 3 different martial arts. You know, he's got me beat hand over fist. So.
And Ms. Smith, let me ask you, are you disabled?
Yes, I am.
What is your disability?
I have back and neck issues, my right arm and my left leg.
Are you able to physically fight with Mr. Norris?
No, I'm not able. I can't physically fight with the 6-year-old.
So is it safe to say that your marriage was tumultuous in August of 2021?
Yes, it was.
At any time in your marriage, did you ever physically threaten Mr. Norris?
No, no,
Did you ever threaten to have him killed?
Lord, no.
Did you ever threaten to put 11 men on Mr. Norris?
No,
Did you ever threaten to have him removed in a pine box?
no,
Now, every married couple fights,
yes,
but it's your testimony today that you didn't threaten him with bodily harm.
no, and especially not in the mental state that he was in.
Okay. Now, let's talk about that for a second, his mental state. Did you have him Baker acted in August of 2021?
Yes, I did.
And did you file something with the court?
Yes, I did.
Why did you do that?
Because he was acting erratic, talking to himself for hours on end, and he was trying to get my friend to sleep with us, and she didn't want to do that, and he had threatened to rape her, and I just felt that someone needed to evaluate him at that point in time.
So, did you swear to those facts in a document with the court?
Yes.
And were you at home when law enforcement came to get Mr. Norris?
No, I wasn't. As a matter of fact, I thought I would be, but I was not there when they picked him up.
Right. Were you staying at the home after you filed the Baker Act paperwork?
Yes.
And at the time you filed the Baker Act paperwork, were you afraid of Mr. Norris?
Yes.
And why is that?
With the way he was acting and already having previous altercations, I didn't know, what would happen.
Where did you go after Mr. Norris was taken by law enforcement for the Baker Act?
I stayed there at the house for a little while. Me and my friend cleaned the house up. There were, lots of things that needed to be straightened up. And then I went to my cousin's house and spent the night there.
And who is your cousin?
Joe McComb.
Did Mr. Norris know that Joe McCombs was your cousin?
Yes.
Did he have regular contact with Mr. McCombs?
I don't know that I would say regular, but he's had contact with him for years. He used to work with him. He's known him for a long time.
So when was probably the last time he saw Mr. McCombs before the night that the shooting occurred?
It was probably the year previous to that happening, probably been about a year.
So it wouldn't have been 20 years between their contact.
Oh, no.
Did you ever know Mr. McCombs to be violent with Mr. Norris?
No, not with Ronnie, no.
Would it be fair to say they got along?
Yeah.
Now, you just testified that you went and stayed with your cousin, Mr. McCombs. When did you come back to the house?
My grandson called me on the phone, and he said, Nona, I think maybe you should come to the house.
Objection, hearsay.
My
Your
grandson
Honor.
called me on the phone, and I came to the house.
Ma'am, if I could, if there's an objection, just hold on, don't answer the question until I make a ruling as to
Okay.
whether or not the objection is sustained.
Okay.
Ms. Sandler.
Your Honor, hearsay is permissible in pretrial hearings.
I think it's also just not for the truth of the matter asserted, but rather why she did what she did.
Correct, Your Honor.
All right, overruled.
So Zane had called me on the phone and said, Nona, I think you need to come to the house. I said, why? What's going on? Because he sounded nervous. He said, Papa was at the house over there, and it sounds like he's tearing the place down. I said, what do you mean? He said he's throwing things.
Let me stop you here. About what time was that?
That was probably right a little after lunch, I think.
Okay, so sometime in the early afternoon?
Yes. So I told Joe, and Joe lives with his mom. So I told Sue Jane and Joe that I needed to go to the house.
And who is Sue Jane?
Sue Jane is Joe's mom. So I told him I needed to go to the house. And Joe asked me if I wanted him to go, and I told him no, because Sue Jane was out in the yard working. I said, you need to stay and help your mom get in the yard. You know, she was raking and stuff, and she's disabled. And he said, no, I have a feeling I need to go with you. I said, it'll be okay. He said, no, I have to insist this time. And so
And why did he need to go with you? Why did he feel he needed to go?
he just,
Objection calls for speculation unless he stated why.
That's what the state is asking, if Mr. McCombs made a statement to you why he felt he needed to go with
he just felt like I would be in harm's way.
There's still an objection.
Oh, I'm sorry.
He gets to make the objection, she gets a chance to respond,
Okay.
and then I'll make a ruling, then you can answer the question potentially. State your objection again, Mr. Williams.
Judge, my objection was that it called for speculation unless she's talking about what Joe
I
told
think
her.
the question was specifically, did he say anything as to why? Got that wrong.
I thought she asked, why did he feel that he needed to go with you? I thought that was the question. If I'm incorrect, I apologize.
I
Let's
clarified.
rephrase the question, Ms. Sandler.
I clarified. Did Mr. McCombs say why he felt he needed to go with you?
He just felt like I needed somebody there. He said, I feel like you need somebody there. I don't feel good about this. I feel uneasy, like you could be in harm's way.
Did you talk to Mr. McCombs about the fact you had Mr. Norris Baker acted?
No, actually, I did not. Not until we were already on the way back to the house.
Okay. Did Mr. McCombs know of your marital history?
Yes.
When I say marital history, did he know about your history with domestic violence with Mr. Norris?
Yes.
Did Mr. McCombs also know that you were disabled?
Yes.
Did Mr. McCombs also know that you were physically incapable of fighting?
Yes.
Now, on August 25th of 2021, did you go back to your home?
Yes.
About what time?
It was later in the afternoon because the sun was still up, but it was kind of, it was starting to get down, you know, like it was trying to be around sunset. I'd say about an hour before sunset.
Okay, how long did it take you to get from Mr. McCombs' residence to your residence?
Probably 45 minutes to an hour. Maybe a little bit longer than that because I did stop. I stopped at my friend Debbie's house and picked up Rhea because Rhea was with me when I went to the house.
Why did you pick up Rhea?
When she needed a ride, she had called me earlier and she needed a ride somewhere, so I was going to give her a ride. So I just picked her up on the way in.
Okay. And you went home because of the call from your grandson?
Yes.
When you got home, what did you see?
Pulled up in the driveway, got out and went to the gate on the porch, and when I went to open the gate, it wouldn't come open easily like it normally does.
So did you go to the, so we're clear, did you go to the house itself or did you go to the driveway?
No, the driveway, I pulled up into the driveway, went to got out of the car, walked up to the porch, and when I went to pull the porch gate open, it didn't want to open, like it was stuck. So I let go of it, and I said, Joe, can you open the gate? And Joe pulled on it, and when he pulled on it, something gave. It was tied shut or something. I don't know what it was, but when he pulled it open and I saw what all was on the porch, I knew something really out of the sort was going on.
And when let me stop you right there. When you say you saw what all was on the porch, what did you see on the porch?
And my clothes were all over the porch. There was a pressure cooker out on the porch. I had a box of hair dye in the house. The hair dye looked like it had been poured out on my clothes. It looked like bleach had been poured out on them. It looked like it had been put in the pressure cooker with some oil, and like the pressure cooker had spit it out all over everything. I'm not sure if it was just poured out or what, but it didn't look good, and it was just really out of sorts. I mean, people just don't do things like that. So,
Were you able to smell bleach?
yeah, I could smell the bleach, but you could see the white spots on my jeans where it had already bleached the jeans out. So I backed down off the porch, and I told him, I said, no, get in the car. And I pulled out of the driveway and out onto the roadway, and then I called for an officer to come out. When the officer got there, he told me, well, this is like the third or fourth.
Hold on just a second. Why did you call an officer?
Because of what I saw on the porch. I wanted someone there. What I came there for was to get some clothes, try to talk to him, and see where it went from there.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness and let the record reflect I've shown State's Exhibit I.
Record will still reflect.
Record the state is showing State's Exhibit I to the witness. Do you recognize that?
Mm-hmm.
What is that a photo of?
It's a photo of clothes, and it's just everything is just strewn everywhere.
Is that the front porch of your residence?
That picture's kind of dark, but it does look like it.
And is this a true and accurate depiction of your porch on the evening of August 25th?
Yes, ma'am.
Has it been changed or altered in any way?
Cleaned up. That's about it.
By cleaned up, how do you mean? You mean the porch is cleaned up, or you mean the picture is cleaned up?
No.
I just need to be clear.
The porch has been cleaned up, cleaned all of that up, and got rid of it.
But the picture is accurate.
Yes.
State moves to admit the State's Exhibit I.
Objections, Mr. Williams?
No objection, Judge.
All right, I will be admitted without objection.
Court of the clerk.
I can hand it over.
The big courtroom. Record reflect the state is showing the witness what's been marked as State's Exhibit J. Can you tell me what that is?
Yeah, that's a picture of my clothes with the pressure cooker, and they're just destroyed.
Is this a true and accurate depiction of your clothes on the evening of August 25th, 2021?
Yes, ma'am.
Has this been changed or altered?
No.
State moves to State's Exhibit J.
No objection.
All right. State's Exhibit J will be admitted without objection.
Now, Ms. Smith, did you do that to your clothes on the porch?
No.
Did you take those things out of your house?
No.
Did you destroy the things on your porch?
No.
At any point that day before the shooting, did you go into the house at all?
No.
So was the first time that day that you went into the house with Mr. McCombs?
Yes.
Let's back up a little bit, talk about law enforcement. You said you called the police once you saw the porch, am I right?
Yes, ma'am.
Where did you wait for the police?
Out on the road, out on the pavement.
And about how far is that from your house?
If you follow the driveway, probably 250, 300 foot, and if you go from the driveway straight through to the road, maybe 150 foot, if that much.
So we're not talking about a very long driveway.
No, it's not real long.
And your house, is it a trailer or like a freestanding home?
It's a trailer.
So the front porch, is that a build on to the trailer?
Yes.
How long did it take for law enforcement to show up when you called them?
Oh, it seemed like forever. I think we were out there probably 45 minutes before they showed up, maybe an hour.
Any point while you were waiting for law enforcement to show up, did Mr. Norris come out of the home?
He came out into the road, but he was coming off of JB Lane back towards the house.
So he didn't come out of the house. He came from somewhere else towards the house.
Right.
Did he approach you in any way?
He didn't approach. He just stopped in the road. He said,
What did he say to you when he stopped?
he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm waiting on an officer." And he said, "Joe McComb, I think you're in the wrong place." Joe said, "No, I'm not. I'm here with my cousin." And Ronnie told him, he said, "Well, I'll show you." And he turned around and walked off.
Did Mr. Norris go back in the house after saying, "I'll show you," to Mr. McCombs?
He went down the driveway. Yes, I'm assuming he went back in the house.
Did you see him go back in the house?
I didn't see him because there's woods in between the road and the house.
Were you afraid to go back in the house?
Alone, yes.
Was that because of the destruction outside of the home?
Partly, yes.
And what was the other part?
Just because of the fact that we had had those few altercations, and the officer, before leaving, told me, he said, "Well, if you go back up to the house, if I have to come back out here, you're both going to jail." I said, "Well, I need to get some clothes and things." And he didn't offer to go to the house with me. He didn't tell me to leave. He just explained to me what community property was and left.
So your testimony is the officer never told you to leave.
No, he did not.
He just talked to you about community property.
Community property, because I told him that was malicious vandalism for my things to be destroyed that way.
Did the officer informed you?
That those were marital assets and that they were community property.
Did that officer show up alone?
He pulled up by himself and started talking with us, but just a few minutes after that, I think it was his supervisor pulled up in an SUV, a blonde-headed lady. I don't remember what her name was, but she stated that she was his supervisor.
Do you remember the name of the officer that showed up when you called?
I think it was Elliot.
Okay. Did he order Mr. McCombs to leave?
No, he didn't order Joe to leave. He just asked him if he had a ride. And Joe told him, "No, I came with Tracy." And he said, "Well, don't you live in Escambia Farms?" Joe said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, don't you think you need to go there?" Joe said, "Well, I'm riding with her." And the officer left it at that.
So the officer never ordered anyone to leave the property,
No,
best of your knowledge.
no, he did not.
How long was the officer there?
They were there probably 30 minutes.
They go talk to Mr. Norris as well?
They did go up there and talk to him, yes.
Did both officers leave after they spoke to you?
Yes, the lady left first, and then he followed her a few minutes later.
Just to make sure that I have the timeline correct, did the officers show up and talk to you first?
Yes,
And then they went and talked to Mr. Norris?
yes.
And then they came back
And
and
then they
talked to
came
you?
back, yes.
Did the officers tell you that they asked Mr. Norris to leave?
No.
The only thing the officers did was explain community property.
Explained community property and told me that we'd go to jail if they had to come back out.
That both of you would go to
Both
jail?
of us would go to
if
jail.
They had to come back out. Now, after those officers left, where did you go?
We went back down the driveway back to the house so I could try to get some clothes. And we had been standing out there forever and then speaking with the officers. So I wanted to get something to drink. I got out of the car, come up on the porch, and Joe was behind me because when I started up the steps to the porch, he put his hand on my shoulder. Rhea was behind him, but later on, I don't know where Rhea went because she never actually ever entered the house. I didn't ever see her come in the house.
Okay, so you and Mr. McCombs and Rhea went up to the porch
Yes,
because you needed to get some clothes.
yes, to see if I had any other clothes in the house I could get.
And why did you do that?
Well, because I was going to leave. I wasn't gonna stay with all of that going on, and the officer acting the way he did about things. He had already said that he'd been there 3 times previous that day and looked at what I had done, so I knew it was already not looking good. I was just going to get some clothes, something to drink, and leave again.
So did the officer accuse you of doing the vandalism outside?
Well, he said that my husband had called for them to come out and witness what I had done to the house or whatever.
But you didn't do anything to the house?
No, I told him, I said, you can check my phone location and you can check at the time I had North Star on my car. You can check my North Star location on the car. I wasn't here.
And Ms. Smith, did you have any other means to get any other clothing at the time?
No,
Do you live off of your disability?
yes,
So anything that you needed would have to come from the home.
yes,
So it was a necessity for you to come into the house to get your things.
yes.
Were you afraid that because he was destroying your property that you might not have anything left?
I was afraid to see what the inside of the house looked like.
Let's talk about going into the house. About how long after the officers left do you think it was when you decided, when you were on the porch?
Maybe 4 or 5 minutes, if that long. Because when we were getting out of the car, I told them to empty their pockets. Please don't take anything in the house. Don't take, not even a phone. Don't even take a phone in. I don't want you to take anything in that he can misconstrue as a weapon. So everybody emptied their pockets.
Did Mr. McCombs have anything in his hands when you were on the porch?
No.
Where were his hands?
His right hand was on my shoulder. His left hand, I guess, was down beside him.
And his right hand was on which shoulder?
It was on the shoulder.
Was Mr. McCombs right behind you?
Yes,
Who tried to get into the house?
I did.
And what happened when you tried to get into the house?
I wanted him to know that it was me coming in, so I knocked on the door really loud. I said, "It's me, I'm coming in." And I pulled the door and it wouldn't come open, and I pulled it again, and it gave a little bit, and I thought, well, it's probably like the porch, the gate was on the porch. And so I just pulled it again, and when I did, something gave because the door came open, but all kinds of things started crashing in the house. It sounded like glass breaking everywhere. So I just kind of stood still for a minute and, realized that it was just whatever had been tied. And so it took me just a moment to kind of gather myself back together to step inside the door. But Joe was right on my heels the whole time because I could still feel his hand on my shoulder the whole time.
And at no point did you ever tell Joe he couldn't come in with you?
No,
Never told him he wasn't invited in?
no,
It was, and he was with you because he was your cousin?
yes.
And when you opened the door, was the door fully opened when you opened it?
The third time I pulled on it, and if whatever was tied to it, I guess, gave, I pulled it all the way open, yes.
Was there another door on the porch?
No.
Or a big piece of wood that you recall?
There was so much stuff out there on the porch. I'm not sure. It seems like one of the tables from inside of the house was outside. Just a lot of my stuff that I had gotten from my grandmother and my aunt and all was outside, all broken in the yard. There was just a lot, so I don't really know.
And when you opened the door, did you rip the door off of its hinges?
No, I couldn't rip the door off the hinges if I wanted to.
Did Mr. McCombs rip the door off of its hinges?
He never touched the door.
Did he just walk in with you?
Yes.
So Mr. McCombs wasn't forcing the door open?
No.
You were able to easily open the door even though it had
Well,
something attached to it?
It wasn't easily, but I did get it open.
Okay. So it didn't require a great deal of force from
No,
you?
no.
And where was Joe when you opened the door?
Right, dead behind me with his hand on my shoulder.
What happened after you opened the door?
I just let Ronnie know we were coming in. I said, "It's me. We're coming in." And I stepped on into the house and walked around the edge of the table to the refrigerator.
And so did you see Mr. Norris when you came in?
No,
So he was not in the kitchen when you came in?
no, he was not.
Is the kitchen right by the front door?
Yes.
And let's talk about the layout of your home a little bit. When you open the front door, what room does it open into?
And when you open the front door, the the living room is to the right and the kitchen is to the left. And then you go through the kitchen and down the hall to the bedrooms and the bathroom.
And you come off the porch into the front door.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
To defense counsel, what's been marked as Exhibit Q. Do you recognize this?
Yes.
Is that your home?
Yes, it is.
This picture of the table and window in your home the night of August 25th, 2021.
Yes, ma'am.
Is it a true and accurate?
Yes.
Has it been altered in any way?
No.
Was this the state of your home when you walked in on the evening of August 25th, 2021?
Yes.
Objections, Mr. Williams?
No objection.
Exhibit Q be admitted without objection.
What was on the table when you walked?
The curtain out of the window, part of the door that closes on my hutch next to the table, and glass was everywhere.
What's been marked as State's Exhibit R that's been previously shown to defense counsel? Can you tell me what's in that?
The kitchen table, a picture out of the hall, the curtain on the table, my hutch that had my crystal and stuff in it. Most of that's on the floor. The door of the hutch, most of the glass from it's on the floor.
Is this a true and accurate depiction of your home as you walked into it on August 25th, 2021?
Yes, ma'am.
Has it been changed or altered?
No, ma'am.
State moves to admit.
No objection.
Exhibit R will be admitted without objection.
And Your Honor, is it okay if I place this?
Yes, that's fine.
Thank you. Showing the witness what's been marked as State's Exhibit. It's been previously shown to defense counsel. Do you recognize this?
Yes, ma'am. That's the threshold to the front door.
Can you tell me what's in this photo?
A big mess. The curtain off of the front door, the bar and hutch that was in the living room, and the awful mess out on the front porch.
Is this a true and accurate depiction of your home on the evening of August 25th, 2021?
Yes, ma'am.
Has it been changed or altered in any way?
No, ma'am.
State moves to admit exhibit.
No objection.
You've been admitted without objection.
State is showing witness what's been marked as State's Exhibit O that's been previously shown to defense counsel. Do you recognize this?
Yes, ma'am. It's my front door from inside the house.
Is this a different view than the photo we just looked at?
This is more up, but basically the same thing. That one was more the ground and the floor. This one is more up.
Is this a true and accurate depiction of your home as you entered it on August 25th, 2021?
Yes, ma'am.
Has it been changed or
No, ma'am.
altered? State moves to admit State's Exhibit.
No objection.
It will be admitted without objection.
Can you tell me what's on the top of the door frame?
Horseshoes.
Were those there when you left the house prior?
There were 2 horseshoes above the door. Yes, ma'am.
How many horseshoes are present in this photo?
It looks like 3 or 4.
So is this more than were present when you left the home?
It looks like it, but I only see 2 distinct horseshoes. I don't know what that is.
So is there something attached to the horseshoes that you can't recognize?
It looks like it. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. On the front porch, are those your belongings?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And the door is still attached?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did Mr. McCombs break down the door to your home?
No, ma'am.
Did he come through a partially open door in your home?
No.
He came through a
Through
fully
an
open door.
a fully open door.
Now, you said you came in by the table where all that mess we just looked at was. What happened after you came in?
I went to the refrigerator. I wanted to get something to drink, see if there was something left to drink.
And
I
was
saw
Mr.
what-
Norris in the kitchen at all?
No, I didn't see him anywhere.
And is that why you went to the refrigerator?
Yes, ma'am. I walked around the table and went to the refrigerator and went to open the fridge. I reached out and grabbed the handle of the fridge.
And where was Mr. McCombs during this?
He was behind me. He still had his hand on my shoulder. And I went to open the fridge, and about the time I went to open the fridge, I heard movement down the hall and turned and looked, and Ronnie come up the hall like it seemed like so fast. I just don't know how fast. He just came up the hall really fast. And he had the shotgun in his hand and stuck it to my forehead. And when he stuck it to my forehead, I told him, I said, I just want to get something to drink and see if I've got some more clothes here.
Okay. Before he came out with the shotgun, did you know he had a shotgun in the home?
I knew there was a shotgun there, but I had been told for 20 years that that shotgun didn't work. It hung on the wall in the house with a cork in the end of it so dirt doppers wouldn't build a nest in it.
So you didn't believe when you went into the home that Mr. Norris was armed?
Right. I didn't think there were any weapons there at all.
Did you believe it was safe for you and Mr. McCombs to go in together?
Yes.
Did you go in the home with the purpose of threatening Mr. Norris?
No.
Did Mr. McCombs make any threatening statements to Mr. Norris before he came down?
No.
Let's get back to that moment where you saw him. Tell me what happened after he stuck the gun to your forehead.
I told him I just wanted to get something to drink and see if I had any more clothes. I said, don't do this, Ronnie.
What did Mr. Norris do after you said, don't do this, Ronnie?
No, he just stood there with the gun pressed against my forehead. And I said it again. He still didn't move, didn't make no motions, didn't say anything. And Joe said, don't do that, man. And when Joe spoke, he took the gun off of my forehead and stuck it to Joe's.
And where was Joe's hand during this?
Joe's hand was still on my shoulder.
Was Joe still behind you?
Yes.
What was Mr. Norris's demeanor while this was going on?
He just looked crazy. He was real stiff. He's standing there real stiff. His eyes didn't look right.
Did he ever say he was frightened of you?
He never said a word.
So he never told you to leave?
He never said a word.
And he never told Mr. McCombs to leave?
No.
What happened after he moved the gun?
He placed the gun on Joe's forehead. And I said, Ronnie, don't do that. Ronnie, don't do this. And Joe, with his left hand, Joe, because he still had his right hand on my shoulder, with his left hand, I saw his left hand come up, and he was like trying to move the barrel of the gun off of his forehead. With the back of his hand, he was kind of moving it a little bit. And about the time he probably moved it about an inch, Ronnie pulled the trigger and just shot him in the head.
I know this is difficult, but do you recall if Joe ever grabbed the firearm from Ronnie?
No.
Did Mr. McCombs ever make a threatening move towards Mr. Norris?
No, he did not.
Did Mr. McCombs inform Mr. Norris that he was only there to make sure Mr. Norris didn't lay hands on him?
No.
So Mr. McCombs never said anything to Mr. Norris?
He never said anything to him except for the one statement of, don't do that, man.
Mr. McCombs never tried to take the gun out of Mr. Norris's hand?
No.
Can you tell the court how you know Mr. McCombs' right hand was on your shoulder when he got shot?
I could still feel his hand on my shoulder. When the gun went off, his hand dropped off my shoulder and he fell kind of forward and sideways and hit his shoulder going down. It kind of listed against the wall and hit the floor.
Was Mr. Norris kind of stepped back from him at that moment?
Yeah, he took like 2 steps back when the gun went off, and then when Joe hit the floor, he went back to the bedroom, and I could hear movement rustling around, and I was scared to death that he was hunting another shotgun shell, and I took off running, and I ran to the neighbor's house and asked them to please call 911.
Did you try to render aid to Mr. McCombs?
When I got back from the neighbors, because I heard Joe moan one time when he hit the floor, and I thought, well, maybe it's not as bad as I thought. And so I went back in the house.
And if you knew Mr. Norris was armed, why did you go back in the house?
Because I had to see about Joe.
Did your concern for Mr. McCombs override your fear of Mr. Norris at that moment?
I guess at that moment I did, because I went back in to check on him. I was just hoping I didn't see what I saw. And when I got to the hall, and he was still laying in the same place, he wasn't moving, he wasn't making any noise. And by that time it had gotten dark. By the time I got back from the neighbors, I flipped the hall light on. And when I flipped the hall light on, I could see the top part of Joe's head missing, and I thought, somewhere in my brain, I thought, if I could just put something over it, if I could just keep his brain inside of his head, he would be okay. He would be okay. And I went to the hall to the bathroom and got a hand towel and put it over his head. And then I heard Ronnie moving around again in the bedroom, and it scared me, and I told him, I said, Joe, I gotta go. And I ran over to my son-in-law's, my ex-son-in-law's. And I told him what happened, and I said, please go check on Joe, please go check on Joe. And so Larry Joe walked over there. And he said when he went through the front door, Ronnie come out of the bedroom and told him.
Objection again, hearsay.
Sustained.
Miss Smith, where was Mr. McCombs shot?
In his head right there.
And when you say right there, do you mean the top right of his head?
Yes, ma'am. It was like almost, it seemed like it was almost dead center, but it was the top of his head right there at the top of his forehead.
That night, did you give a statement to the police?
I spoke with an officer, but I don't think I ever gave a statement.
Not that night.
Not that night.
And why didn't you give a statement that night?
Because they took me up to the office, and they already had Ronnie in there. I guess questioning, I could hear his voice, and I couldn't stay in there. I just couldn't. They kept moving me further back into a different room and further back into a different room, and I could still hear him, and I couldn't. I just couldn't think. I just couldn't think.
Did your son ask you not to give a statement that night?
My son said, yes, Joseph told me, he said, I don't want you to talk to him, Mom. You're too upset. You just need to get in the car and go with me. I said, well, I already told the officer I'd go up there with him. And I did go up there with him. But then nobody ever came back there in the room and asked me any questions. And there was another little officer that come back there, and I told him, I said, if somebody doesn't, I gotta go. If somebody doesn't come, I gotta go. I can't stay in here. And he said, well, what's wrong? I said, well, how are you? Y'all, I don't see y'all have the ability to keep him in there. You only got one officer. And I gotta go.
Were you still afraid of Mr. Norris?
Yes.
Did you eventually give a statement to law enforcement?
I don't think I ever gave a statement to law enforcement. I don't think they ever even tried to contact me.
Did you give a statement to an officer later in Attorney Gilpow's office?
Yes, I did, up at Gill's.
I have a moment with co-counsel, Your Honor. Ms. Smith, do you still recognize Mr. Norris?
Yes.
Is he present in the courtroom today?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you identify him by an article of clothing he's wearing?
Yes, ma'am. It's an orange jumpsuit.
Record reflect that Ms. Smith has identified Ronald Norris.
That the witness has identified the defendant, Mr. Norris.
Is that the individual that shot Joe McCombs?
Yes, it is.
Question, Your Honor.
Mr. Williams, are you prepared for cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, go ahead.
Afternoon, Ms. Smith.
Good afternoon.
When did you guys get married, you and Mr. Norris?
I don't even know. It's been years ago. I can't even think right now.
So you don't remember what year y'all got married?
I don't remember what year. It was February 12th, though.
Okay. When did you get the house?
It was my inheritance my mom gave to me early. It was in seems like it was 2018, I think 17. The trailer came from my NLC, and the property came from my mom.
All right, so if y'all have been married some 24, 25 years, then you received this from your mother during the course of the marriage, correct?
Yes, after my stepfather died.
Okay. And you said it was your inheritance, and then it sounded like you said that it was an early gift from your mom. So I'm a little confused.
No,
Was it
I said my mom gave me my inheritance early.
gave you your inheritance early?
Yes, sir.
Was it, had the house passed to your mom, and then you always, everybody understood you were going to be getting the house ultimately, and she just went ahead and gave it to you before she passed?
My mom gave me the property.
Okay, so it was a gift from your mom at that point,
No, it was my inheritance she gave to me early.
before the
There's a
person
difference
leaving
between
it?
a gift and an inheritance.
Yes, ma'am, I understand that, but generally, and I'm not here to argue with the point with you, was your mother still alive when she gave it to you?
Yes.
Okay. Was it an inheritance from her?
It was from her and my stepdad. My stepdad had passed.
Okay. When your stepdad passed, did it become your mom's?
My mom's and my stepbrother's.
Okay, all right. And then your mother passed it along to you before she actually passed.
Yes.
Okay, okay. All right. Was there still any money owed on the property? Has to do with special equities in the property and the statement that it's her house as opposed to Mr. Norris's.
Overruled.
Was there still any monies owed on the house?
My mom still owed money on it.
All right. Did you and Mr. Norris make those payments?
No. My mom made those payments. She
Okay.
made the last of the payments with my money from my stepdad's death.
Okay. Were there any improvements made to the property?
We cleared a little bit of land, yeah, for the trailer.
All right. And did Mr. Norris take part in that?
Yes, of
Okay.
course, it's my husband.
Ma'am, have you ever used illegal narcotics?
Yes.
Okay. Did you ever use illegal narcotics with Joe?
With who?
With Mr. McCombs?
Oh, with Joe. Probably.
Okay. Ma'am, you testified that you didn't know that the shotgun worked. Did you tell law enforcement that there were and that you didn't think there were firearms in the house? Did you tell law enforcement that night that when they came out that you believed that there were firearms in the house, but that you had all the shells in the trunk of your car?
No, I did not tell law enforcement that. I did tell them that there was a shotgun in the house, but he had told me it didn't work.
All right, but you didn't say anything about having taken all the shells?
No.
Okay.
There weren't any shells supposed to be there. The gun didn't work.
All right, and ultimately, you gave a statement to law enforcement at Gil Powell's office.
Yes, sir.
Was Mr. Powell representing you at the time?
I don't guess so. I don't understand. I went up there to talk to Gil about some things, yes. I guess if I had asked him, he would have.
Okay. How did it come about that the statement was given at Mr. Powell, the attorney's office, as opposed to at a law enforcement office?
Because CJ, his ex-wife, was getting Gil to represent them in a lawsuit. And she was up there when I guess the investigator came through there, and she called me and asked me would I come up there and talk to them. And I told her, yeah, because they had never taken my statement.
Nobody ever asked you to come to the sheriff's office and
No,
use the interview room there or anything?
no.
Now, you testified earlier about an incident between you and Mr. Norris, and you said that you threw some things at him.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me ask you, were there any like little unicorns?
I had unicorns all over the house.
Okay, all right, so that was something that you collected? Mm-hmm. All right.
Yes, sir.
Were any of the things that you threw the little unicorns?
That's a good possibility, yeah.
Okay, you don't remember really what you threw?
No, I just grabbed something and threw it.
Okay. Do you remember biting his cheek?
No. I
You
do
remember-
remember biting him on the back.
You do remember biting him on the back? Mm-hmm. Was that before or after he got poked by the unicorns?
I didn't know he had ever gotten poked by a unicorn.
So you deny taking one of the unicorns and stabbing him with it?
Oh, yes, vehemently.
Okay. But you admit having bitten him in the side?
No, on his back.
On his
Close
back?
to his shoulder.
Oh,
here.
high up on his back, not
Yeah.
down?
Not down low, no, because he had my bad arm all twisted up and wouldn't let go of me and was slinging me up against the refrigerator. And when I managed to worm my way around, I did what I had to do to get loose from him.
And, ma'am, now that was I guess the last time that you were arrested for domestic violence on Mr. Norris, right?
Yes, I guess so. I was
Okay.
only arrested once or twice.
Once or twice, you don't remember?
I think it was twice. And he was arrested for domestic violence on me.
Okay. And he did a drop charge request, and the charges against you got dropped the last time.
Yes, sir. I believe
Okay.
so.
And were you also arrested for violating the conditions of your pretrial release when you were on pretrial release for domestic violence on Ronnie?
Can I explain?
Well, right now, it's just a yes or no question.
Then yes.
Okay. Now, did you ever wind up with other than the bond condition that you stay away, did you ever wind up with an actual injunction against you?
No.
Okay. Not even temporary?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
Just the no contact from the pretrial.
All right. And that's what you were prosecuted for, was violating that pretrial condition?
I was arrested for it. I was never prosecuted.
And when he was taking you home, did he pick you up at the jail and take you home?
No.
I mean, after the charges were dropped?
No.
Okay. Was there a point where you got bonded out and he picked you up and took you home?
No.
Okay.
The first time I went to jail and I bonded out, my brother and his wife came and got me. And the second time I got out, I walked to the store and a friend of mine picked me up and took me home.
Okay. Well, did you wind up telling him you were going to get him back
Get him back for what?
for having you arrested?
Why, no, that would be, no, that was just the course of things. The law determined who got arrested.
When you use illegal narcotics, what's your drug of choice now, or drug of choice back when this was going on?
We were doing methamphetamine, both of us.
Did you notice that methamphetamine causes any sort of aggressive behaviors?
I guess it does in a lot of individuals. I've seen that over the course of time, yeah.
Was meth the controlled substance that you would use with Joe?
Used with Joe?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was methamphetamine and sometimes maybe a pill,
Do you know what the pill was?
probably a Percocet.
Were you at the point where you weren't really being very discriminating in what you were taking?
I'm always discriminating.
All right, but you're not sure if it was a Percocet?
No, I'm pretty positive it was a Percocet.
I'm sorry, I thought you said maybe a Percocet. Okay.
Maybe a Percocet. If I used any other drug with him, it would have been a Percocet.
And it's your testimony that Mr. McCombs, Joe, had taken the left hand and pushed it, I guess, to his left side?
Yes, he was gradually pushing this way.
Like this?
Yes.
Can you explain why there would be any sort of a burn mark on the palm of his hand?
No.
He didn't burn it on a hot pan or something like that
No.
while you guys were living together?
No. While we were living together, please explain.
Well,
that.
you were staying with him.
No. I went and spent the night at Sue Jane's house, which he lived in. They
All
were
right.
both my cousins.
Well, that's what I mean. Where he was living, you were living.
Okay,
for
I just didn't
a
like the
night
way
or
you
two.
said that. You kind of, it just didn't come out right. It didn't sound good.
Okay. But he didn't like burn his hand on a hot pan or something like that while you were staying
no.
with Sue's?
No, not that I know of.
Okay. And what's her name again? Sue what?
Sue Jane McComb.
Sue Jane?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Ma'am, given everything that the law enforcement officer said to you, given the concerns that you were expressing, everything else, there are convenience stores in that area where you can get something to drink, right?
Yes, several miles away.
Okay, and there's, well, I mean, between there and American Farms. Not
Well,
American
yeah.
Farms. Was he in American Farms in,
Escambia Farm.
Escambia Farms in Okaloosa, not American Farms in Santa Rosa?
Right, right.
Okay.
Escambia Farms.
All right, so, but between there and Escambia Farms, there, there were convenience stores where you could get something to drink, right?
Yeah, Browns.
Okay. And when you packed up to go stay with Sue Jane's, you took clothes with you, right?
I didn't pack up to go stay at Sue Jane's. I just went up there to see her and ended up spending the night. No, I took nothing with me.
You were only there one night?
One night.
All right, he was gone 2 nights, correct?
Yes,
Okay. Where were you the other night?
at my house.
Okay. So you were there at the house before he came back. You spent the night there at the house before he came back. You just weren't there the night immediately before, right?
Right.
Okay. How did it come about that you spent the night there then, if you didn't have any clothes with you, any plans to spend the night, anything like that?
Because I ran into Joe at the dollar store, and I hadn't seen Sue Jane in quite a while. And he said, well, would you just ride up here to the house and, visit with us for a little while? So I did, and it got late, and I decided I'd just stay.
Was there any other reason why you needed to stay?
No.
You would have been safe to drive home?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the day that all this happened, did you and Joe smoke any meth?
No.
Were you with Joe that day?
Yes.
Were you with Joe, not in any bad sense, but were you in the same house as Joe the night before?
Yes.
And you had gone over that day before, right?
The evening before, yes.
Did you see Joe use any non-prescription controlled substances
That night?
that night?
No, sir.
Well, I mean, during that time that you were with him?
No.
All
No.
right. Did you see him smoke any meth during
No.
the time that you were with him?
No.
Okay.
Neither one of us used anything.
All right. All right, I don't have any further questions at this time, Your Honor.
You direct, Ms. Sandler.
A couple clarifying questions. Can you explain why you were arrested for violating pretrial release?
Yes, ma'am, because my mom had Alzheimer's and she was starting to get dementia at that point in time, and I helped take care of her. And when they told me I couldn't go back to my house, that meant I couldn't help take care of my mom. She only had Zane there, and he was really young. He's a teenager. I just went over there on Sunday to wait for her to get in from church so I could see my mom. And I thought it was at least 500 foot from the trailer over there. I didn't get out and measure the distance. And when Ronnie saw me outside on Bree and Larry's porch, he started yelling and cussing at me, and the neighbor called the law. And when they came out there, they measured it, and it was only 261 foot. So they placed me under arrest, and I just wanted to see my mom.
You stated earlier, we both used meth. By we both, who did you mean?
Me and Ronnie.
So Mr. Norris used methamphetamine.
Oh, yes, ma'am, lots of it, because he was taking the tools out of the shed and selling them to the neighbors for meth so he could go get more.
So in August of 2021, Mr. Norris was actively using methamphetamine.
Yes, yes,
Did you witness him using methamphetamine?
yes.
When was the last time you saw him use methamphetamine?
The day before they picked him up on the Baker Act.
Was that at the house?
Yes. Yeah, he got to where he wouldn't even leave the house too much. He'd walk down to Jonathan's.
That's all I have. Thank you.
May this witness be excused.
Thank you.
Ms. Sandler.
Yes, Your Honor.
Sorry, I just couldn't heard you when you turned. Mr. Williams, any reason why she
Judge, I
should
don't
remain?
intend to call her on any sort of rebuttal or anything like that.
Okay, all right, ma'am, you're free to go. Thank you. Another witness?
Several. but we would call Dr. Deanna.
Okay.
Yeah.
Afternoon, can you raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony about to give is the truth? There, make sure you speak into the microphone for us.